Good morning, everyone. Okay. Good to go. Thank you. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Christmas Eve for all of us. Also, we got a message from Kempo this morning wishing Sangha happy, how did he say it in his Tiblish? I can't remember. Happy, happy holidays and Merry Christmas Eve, something like that. Anyway, that's nice to hear. Yeah. We've been on the Thursday night reading this book, and our study group brought up something I think was rather helpful. Really, what distinguishes Buddhism amongst all the teachings is its teaching of realization, of enlightenment, of Buddhahood, all these different names for it. Buddha is such a remarkable teacher, such a remarkable, figure in human history, generally unrecognized, of course, by most of the world, certainly the developed world. But not only did he, from his profound enlightenment, come to teach, and with all of these teachings that have come down to us and have been added to and elaborated based on that realization for 2,500 years, he also took teachings that were in existence at that time, but transformed them significantly. And the transformation is basically realization is the key to that. Even this first verse in the 37 practices, having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, the human body, hear, think, and meditate. That's the outline of practice, how we come to enlightenment. We have to hear the teachings first. That can be reading, that can be seeing a video, whatever. Then we have to think on it. This is largely skipped in a lot of Western interest in Buddhism. They skip the thinking part. They sort of jump to meditate. But importantly, what are you meditating on? So hear, think, and meditate. Think can be thought of as analyze. Think can be thought of going deeply with your conceptual mind, but going thoroughly into what you've heard, what you've learned. So when it says something that, patience is a virtue, or even the fact that there are virtues, you got to question these things. And then that's the thinking part. It's said that we live in this world of appearances, which is inherently threatening to us. I mean, everything is just because of this feeling of alienation that we have, and we take that to be true. Everything is either some sort of benefit if we can only grab onto it, or a threat if we can only push it away. When you hear the teachings of the Buddha for the first time, the teachings about realization, there's just a little island of stability in your mind. Rather than the false kind of refuge, the false kind of stability of how can I gather, I can be like a multi-billionaire or something, then I'll be peaceful, right? Because I can buy off any lawyers, I can do anything, I can own governments, I can whatever. I'm trying to find some sort of worldly peace. I'm never going to be there. But instead of that, when you hear the teachings of the Buddha and know for the first time that there is the possibility of realization, there is the possibility of transcending suffering, you might say. Well, that in itself brings a little nub, a little atoll of peace in your mind. It's not 100% agitated anymore. There's this hope, there's this, in a very small degree, of realization. But then with the thinking, with the analyzing, we're testing those thoughts, those concepts, and thereby, with the sort of further elimination of doubt, not only is it possible, but it's starting to make sense to your conceptual mind and resonating with, your experiential mind, then there's a greater island of sanity in this insane world. So on that, then we meditate, and meditate in Tibetan, as you know, is gom. It means to grow accustomed to. So we're abiding in that sanity for the first time. And the sanity expresses itself in a conceptual way, because that's how human beings communicate in that. It's deeper than that, of course, but that's like the window that lets us in. It truly underneath it, even in that concept, the valid concepts, even there is your natural mind, the nature of your mind manifesting truly. It's truly not concepts that you're relying in, but it appears that way to us. So we do. Then by meditating on what we've learned, what we've analyzed, what happens? More and more peace. The concentration itself becomes like a tsunami of sanity. And it's said, like the image that's given, that, you know, our mind is like a lake or an ocean or a pond, and it's continually agitated by waves. And so although our true nature, which is like the full moon, is constantly shining, we experience it in this fractured way, every wave chopping it up. So with the power of shamatha, concentration of the mind, the inherent sanity of the mind, those waves calm down. And when the waves are calm, when the agitations are gone, even just for an instant, you see the perfect reflection of the moon. And then there's no doubt, because you've seen what you've seen. You know, someone can tell you, some crazy person on the street, they can tell you that the sun comes up in the west, but, you know, you have the experience, the reasoned experience, and the experience of people for how many millions of years, that it comes up in the east. It doesn't even bother you, because you know, you have wisdom. And then you can actually help that person, because you're dealing from wisdom, not from just the agitations. So this hear, think, and meditate. Having gained this rare ship of freedom, fortune, hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly, night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. To free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. That's realization. So there's right from the get-go this faith, this conviction that there is something other than this ocean of cyclic existence. The ups and downs constantly in our mind, constantly in birth after birth, constantly in the world outside of us. So this fact of realization is key, because the teachings of the Buddha had said to be like someone going to the ocean. You go to the ocean, if you come with a thimble, you can get a thimble full of water. If you come with a bucket, you'll get a bucket full of water. If you come with a big tanker, you can walk away with a whole lot of ocean. If you completely open your heart, you can get the ocean level of wisdom. It's up to us. So the Buddha in his teachings, it seems on some level, I mean, so, I don't know, so sort of kind of preliminary or something. You know, he says that the first noble truth, that this unenlightened existence is suffering. But in that statement is all the profundity. So in our prayer book on page 11, we have the 4 immeasurables. You know, we call it the short mindset prayer. May all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion to near and far. So these 4 are called the 4 immeasurables. They're teaching from ancient India that the Buddha took and then transformed. And when I say ancient India, we have to realize that this isn't modern Hinduism, which is a subject of which I know very little, but I also know that there was a great Hindu reformer in the Middle Ages. I mean, back in the 600s, 700s, I think. I've forgotten his name. Forgive me, Shantirakshita, maybe. I don't think that's right. At any rate, he was criticized by non-dual Shaivism. That's what the tradition that exists now came from his reforms. And he was criticized by other Indian teachers of the day, not Buddhist, but by other Indian teachers of the day as being a crypto-Buddhist, because his teachings were so similar to Buddhism. And I think a lot of modern Hinduism is based on that, but I don't know. I don't know about it. But what I'm talking about now are traditions that existed in India back in the Buddha's time, before that reform. As we know from the Buddha, he was born into this incredibly privileged kind of situation, and had all these incredible talents and intelligence and just everything. He was like the shining star of his kingdom as a prince, and then married and had a child. And the story says when the child was born, that's when, disturbed by the existence of suffering, he left his situation palace and became a wandering ascetic, which existed in India at that time, and maybe several centuries before didn't really. So there was a lot going on in India at the time. But he left his palace, all the attempts to find happiness, through just the accumulation of material goods and all of the stuff that, really our whole world seems to be based on now. He rejected that, he renounced that, and he went out wandering in the wilderness, and he sought out serially the great teachers of his time. Now, they practiced different meditations, but the first one, I can't remember the name. The names escape me of the two. I mispronounce them. They're old Sanskrit type names. These four immeasurables, again, teachings of that time, the teachings of the Buddha converted them into being able to teach ordinary sentient beings, us, happiness. Happiness is the wish for others to be happy. Love, happy, to want others to be happy, but then even more subtly, suffering, the removal of beings from suffering and the causes of suffering. Then joy, just this joy that comes when you see the acts of a bodhisattva, acts of virtue, the spontaneous kind of happiness that you feel. Gaura Rinpoche has said this is the easiest way to come to enlightenment. You're just practicing experiencing joy when you see other people doing virtuous things, or you're thinking about it. And then finally, equanimity, the great impartiality. Now, again, our text here, the short mindset prayer, is how Buddha transformed these teachings. Because, as you know, may all mother sentient beings, combining it with bodhicitta, these, before they were transformed by the Buddha, these were the teachings that led to the highest levels of worldly existence. And they, in the Buddhist sense, they lead to bodhicitta, which is the jumping off into enlightenment. And that's both relative, conventional bodhicitta, and absolute bodhicitta. But nonetheless, in this ancient system, they talked about, and we still have this in the Buddhist teachings, how do we describe dualistic existence? How do we describe the different levels, so to speak, of this alienated mind that we have, that beings can manifest and have? Well, they talk about three realms, right? First realm, and it gets a little confusing because the first realm, the realm of desire, is also called the six realms. We often hear that. Human beings fighting lower divinities, sensual lower divinities. And then below the human beings, the animal realm, of which we are aware. Then hungry ghosts motivated by greed, and then the hellish beings that are the results of abiding in hatred, both cold and hot hells. So there's the realm of desire. But what does that mean? It means that everything for beings on that level of consciousness, everything is about desire, because we feel this strong alienation. And so paradoxically, although the human system is the easiest, the best, the most advantageous platform from which to come to enlightenment, it's still marked by desire. So we have to present desire for desirelessness in terms of desire. These are the paradoxes that we live in, and there's nothing wrong with that. So there's the realm of desire, but then above that, there's the realm of form. This really means subtle form. These are heavenly kind of realms that are very, very refined in their consciousness. But they're you might say immaterial, or the material is so subtle that generally we don't experience that. And then above that is the highest realm, arupa, like agnostic, a cappella, atheist, arupa, what? Without rupa, form, formless realms. These are called the 4 stations of Brahma, the highest conceptualization in India at that time. These are the 4 immeasurables, these mindsets. Now, sometimes when you read the text, say Vajrakalaya or Vajrakalaya practice, why does Vajrakalaya have 4 legs? Because each one of them is one of the 4 immeasurables. He's standing on the 4 immeasurables. All right, so what are these mindsets? Well, it's said that someone who has attained this level of worldly meditation, and of course it corresponds to this realm, first there's just this sense, your consciousness is just one of infinite space. And the Buddha transformed that into this desire to bring love to others. This is the equivalent mindset. But nonetheless, he brought it right back down to earth for people like us. But still, endless space, that's all you're aware of. The next one up is endless consciousness. So it's a step subtler, but that's all you're aware of, is just the fact of your consciousness itself. No object, so to speak. The consciousness itself is the object. That's how subtle we're getting. And then above that is emptiness, but not emptiness as we use it in the Mahayana way, shunyata, the merging of wisdom and compassion, but emptiness in the sense that there just doesn't seem to be anything. It's just you're just aware the object is one of not existing, so to speak, but it's still something conscious of non-existence. Then finally, the top level of worldly mindsets is neither perception nor non-perception. So think how subtle that is. It's said that you can rest in these states for actually eons. And they correspond to these, again, these heavenly realms of Brahma, the highest states. Well, the Buddha sought out teachers. And first, with his first teacher, he attained that 3rd level, the level of the worldly emptiness. And his teacher said to him, "This is excellent that you've done this. I'd like you to be my successor and to teach all my students, keep our tradition going." And the Buddha said, "No, I'm not satisfied." So he found out another teacher, and he attained eventually actually rather quickly, it said, the highest state, that neither perception nor non-perception. This was the highest accomplishment in worldly meditative practice. But the Buddha was not. And the same thing, the teacher said, "Yes, you should be my successor here." And he said, "No, because I haven't discovered the cause of suffering." So the teachings of the time in India were very much of a self with a capital S. And the teaching is that the self was somehow I don't know what to say, transcendent or something, but our self was the same as that self, little self, big self, kind of like this. Again, I don't know much about this. But nonetheless, there's a famous dialogue between a wandering ascetic at the Buddha's time and the Buddha himself about this. Was this self? Was this the end of suffering? And the Buddha determined that this self, with a capital S, for the Christians, probably like a soul or whatever, he said that it too was the product of causes and conditions. And so therefore, to be stuck on this idea of a self or a soul was actually a cause of suffering. He said it was like a dog being tied to a post. So the Buddha's teaching was anatta, no self, selflessness. But what does this mean? I mean, it has profound meanings. That is realization. But the fact that the highest teaching of his day was mired in suffering led to his first teaching, first noble truth, that all of this is dissatisfactory. All of this is suffering. So it's a radical step away from all our machinations, all our attempts to find some perfect situation, some perfect organization, some perfect relationship, some perfect worldly situation, some perfect spiritual state. All of this. He pulled the rug out from everything. And you can see why he hesitated to teach. Because human beings are quite a group. We get stuff wrong. And we can take the highest teachings, even teachings like the Atman, the self, even teachings like the soul, which can be beneficial. We can still take those and pervert them to our own worldly ends, because our attachment, our clinging is so unseen to us. I mean, the grosser clingings, yes, we can see. But the subtle ones, it takes meditation. You have to calm down that lake. So it's a perfect, at least for moments, a perfect reflection of our true nature. And then it's clear. And that's extremely helpful, because even though the same pattern is going in there, the same momentum, the same karmic inertia that we all have, we're experiencing what we've practiced. We're practicing what we've practiced. We've trained ourselves in this worldly kind of existence, this attachment to self, this clinging that justifies everything. It's just amazing. So we have to see into the falsity of that, or actually see the reality of it. What is its actual nature? And then suddenly a whole different world opens up. One Chinese master said, it's like, the whole world became a big bowl of rice. And anytime I wanted this, I could just dip my head down and take a big bite. Suddenly, even on the path, you are free to be yourself, because your actions, your afflictions are no longer sort of feeding or sustaining this kind of ultimate delusion. Instead, they just become manifestations. Like, you are the Buddha. The Buddha, Tara's wearing a golden crown. She's got flowers. She's got all sorts of beautiful things. Those are your flowers. And instead of the things that seem to make us, so much problem, I'm an impatient person. Instead, I'm an impatient person. We're losing that alienation. The perception is still there, but the suffering is not there with it, or at least the suffering is lessened. And this feeling that you're on the path, it's just like, we drove to see our daughter Megan in New Haven, and I don't know about you, but I get so bored with that freeway. It's not a freeway, tollway. They hit me with the charges. When you take 90 from here until you get to, I don't know, the Mohawk Valley, and you can see the river, and in Amsterdam where who's the actor? Kirk, is it Kirk? Who's the guy with the dimple in his chin? Spartacus. Kirk Douglas, thank you. Yeah, he was born in Amsterdam. So every time I drive by Amsterdam, I'm thinking, wow, from here to there, I get really bored, But you're on the way to New Haven. It's like, it's okay. It's like that with practice. I'm on my way to the Pure Land. I'm on my way to Buddhahood. So all of these things then become purification. All your suffering becomes positive in a sense. This is the meaning of the Pure Land. When we're on the level of the Pure Land, it says even the birds are speaking the Dharma. There's no suffering there. It means that every single thing is working for your development. We can do that right here, right now. And that's what His Holiness Dalai Lama teaches all the time. So these four mindsets, the Buddha then came to that first noble truth, suffering. It's so profound. It's just so profound. And therefore, we immediately have the right view. Instead of, this is what it means to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Yes, there's an outer meaning, but it's the inner meaning that's there too. Buddha is your own awake nature. Dharma is the truth of that nature as it manifests. And the Sangha, the enlightened beings that have realized that. and also the aspects of our nature that are realizing it, so to speak. I mean, again, we're forced to speak in paradox. But the remarkable thing is the profundity of this. And therefore, it's like, to me, it's like therapy at the deepest level. You can have someone, say, who is very easily triggered and reacts very strongly, negatively to frustrations in their life. And there's all sorts of things that can be done about that. But in the 37 practices, when the afflictive emotions arise, mindfulness and awareness, if you can train yourself, that mindfulness and awareness, the affliction is not there. It's dissolved. But of course, because of the way that we've trained ourselves, there's this gap. But still, we can lessen that gap, so to speak. We can train, at least conceptually knowing helps. Because again, it's not 100% painful emotion. You're sort of distanced from it by your conceptual thought. Normally, that's not a good thing. But when we use concepts to get beyond concepts, you get to the point where your experience is that unadulterated, unalienated immediacy. That's, to one degree or another, a realization. And so this faith that there's confidence, really, that there's something, beyond this shifting world of appearances. I mean, for science, for instance, the deeper we go, it just gets more and more confusing. They just keep discovering more and more and more and more and more. And nothing wrong with that. But if you're kind of looking for some sort of refuge there, you're going to be disappointed, because whatever we attach to, 100 years later, is shown to be not the full story. And Newton is great, but Einstein kind of replaced him. And now we've got people challenging the Big Bang even. I mean, it's just so fascinating to me. It's a shifting world of appearances. It's no problem for the Buddhists. It's no problem, because they're not hoping to find some sort of protection or refuge for their alienated state in an alienated world. Instead, they're going to the nature of the world itself, the nature of the mind itself, and all of its projections. So, the greatness of the Dharma, too, is that the Buddha was able to express these profound realization in ways that are right here, right now. This is just truly, truly, truly remarkable. Because whatever thing, we come up with, whatever kind of short term sounds good, in 50 years, it sounds antiquated. But somehow these teachings have maintained themselves for all these years. And why? Because it's just simply reality. So it combines this kind of scientific kind of inquiry and acceptance of experience, fact, but it recognizes the whole inner world of experience as being valid, or at least valid stuff to be working with. So it combines that with the religious view that there's something beyond this. But of course, for the Buddhists, it's not really beyond. It's right here, right now, but we're just not experiencing it. So Gretchen's been going through some of our books. We were trying to get organized a little bit, the collection of a lifetime. And she came across this Lama Yeshe's Becoming Your Own Therapist book. He just recently passed away. And no, it was his successor, his main student, was, I can't remember his name now. Lama Zopa, yeah. Two great Gelug lamas. Lama Yeshe died. Lama Yeshe died very young, I think, with heart disease or something like that. But I just thought the introduction of this was kind of interesting for us. He says, when we study Buddhism, we are studying ourselves, the nature of our own minds. Instead of focusing on some supreme being, Buddhism emphasizes more practical matters, such as how to lead our lives, how to integrate our minds, and how to keep our everyday lives peaceful and healthy. In other words, Buddhism always accentuates experiential knowledge wisdom rather than some dogmatic view. In fact, we don't even consider Buddhism to be a religion in the usual sense of the term. From the Lama's point of view, Buddhist teachings are more in the realm of philosophy, science, or psychology. The human mind instinctively seeks happiness. East, west, there's no difference. Everybody's doing the same thing. But if your search for happiness causes you to grasp emotionally at the sense world, it can be very dangerous. You have no control. Now, don't think that control is an Eastern thing, a Buddhist thing. We all need control, especially those of us caught up in the materialistic life. Psychologically, emotionally, we're too involved in objects of attachment. From the Buddhist point of view, that's an unhealthy mind. You're mentally ill. Actually, you already know that external scientific technological development alone cannot satisfy the desires of your attachment or solve your other emotional problems. But what Lord Buddha's teaching shows you is the characteristic nature of human potential, the capacity of the human mind. When you study Buddhism, you learn what you are and how to develop further. Instead of emphasizing some kind of supernatural belief system, Buddhist methods teach you to develop a deep understanding of yourself and all other phenomena. However, whether you are religious or a materialist, a believer or an atheist, it is crucial that you know how your own mind works. If you don't, you'll go around thinking you're healthy, when in reality, the deep root of afflictive emotions, the true cause of all psychological disease, is there, growing within you. Because of that, all it takes is some tiny external thing changing, something insignificant going wrong, and within a few seconds, you're completely upset. To me, that shows you're mentally ill. Why? Because you're obsessed with the sense world, blinded by attachment, and under control of the fundamental cause of all problems, ignorance of the true nature of your own mind. It doesn't matter if you try to refute what I'm saying by telling me you don't believe it. It's not a question of belief. No matter how much you say, I don't believe I have a nose, your nose is still there, right between your eyes. Your nose is always there, whether you believe it or not. I've met many people who proudly proclaim, I'm not a believer. They're so proud of their professed lack of belief in anything. You check up. This is important to know. In the world today, there are so many contradictions. Scientific materialists boast, I don't believe. Religious people say, I believe. But no matter what you think, you still need to know the characteristic nature of your own mind. If you don't, then no matter how much you talk about the shortcomings of attachment, you have no idea what attachment actually is or how to control it. Words are easy. What's really difficult is to understand the true nature of attachment. One of the great things, I think about the great teachers that we've had all of us have had the fortune to somehow come in contact with. Gaur Rinpoche being, a perfect example. Why is he spending the time on Dharma centers? This is amazing. I think of the help that we've had from him. We're not even part of his organization. And when he got old, it often happens in Tibet, you end up with a sort of a bevy of lamas who are the administrators who surround the tulku, the teacher, the reincarnate teacher. And there's actually sense in that too, because they kind of isolate the head lama from a lot of the political decisions, and that always gets somebody pissed off. So they sort of maintain their purity, which is real. But nonetheless, when Gaur Rinpoche got old, he was coming to Rochester from the time that he first came to America every year. And again, we weren't even part of his organization. It was just tremendous what he's done, and the support that he's given us. And so the Lama said, no, you're old now. You're not going to be traveling around anymore. You can travel to some of our centers now, but you can't go to White Lotus anymore. And Gaur Rinpoche said, oh, okay. He said, well, on my vacation then, I'll go to White Lotus. So they said, oh, what the hell? You get to go to White Lotus. So he did. But now he's not traveling like that at all. He went to his own centers. But it always comes up for me, because I guess conditioned as an American, kind of like strong narcissistic tendencies, rank individualism, all the stuff that we have and believe so strongly. I'm thinking, I don't need a Dharma center. I just practice by myself. That's fine. Why does he put so much into that? Others too, similarly. And it's because of this teaching of compassion, that the nature of great realization is, butter has a certain quality. Wisdom, as experienced by us in an attached kind of sense, is compassion. And it's so helpful because, like Lama Yeshe says, if you don't believe in attachments, or you think, but unless you experience, and I think actually, the pain of attachment. And Dharma Center means you're working with other people. The other people have to come together. People have to do things. People have to give up some of their own time, whatever. This is all extremely helpful because now all of a sudden it's in a dharmic situation. And that's extremely helpful. It's just the path. They've been doing it for a long time. And the other thing that's helpful is that you can see that it works. So even though someone like me, I didn't know the difference between, Vajrasattva and Vajradhara, all these just bizarre words floating around and strange looking Buddhas, and what the heck is happening, when you meet someone who is that realized truly, even if you don't know what realization is, you can have confidence. And again, it's like that, that story of Gar Rinpoche in Boston, and forgive me those of you who have heard it again, but for those of you who haven't, so Gar Rinpoche was giving a talk at the Harvard Divinity School, and our daughter was an undergraduate at the time, was going to do the translating for it. And they had the Lama staying in the house of one of the sponsors, Tana Petso, and she was having remodeling done in her house. So she had all these guys, with work boots on, doing drywall and all sorts of stuff. And one of the guys says, gee, I need to go to the bathroom. Where do I go? And she points out the bathroom to him. He walks into the bathroom, and without knowing it, there's Gar Rinpoche taking a bath. He's in the tub, this naked man in the tub, And again, those of you who don't know him, he's always doing a prayer wheel. And when I heard this story, my first wonder was, I wonder if he's doing the prayer wheel in the tub, but apart from that. But at any rate, he doesn't know a word of English. And of course, this guy's American, right? We're a Protestant culture. I can't be in the bathroom with somebody else. This is my private space, blah, 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 shameful, blah, 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 blah. We all inherit all of that stuff. But Gar Rinpoche somehow convinces him, no, it's okay. You can come in. And he instantly knew, I'm sure, what he was there for, and just come just us guys, so to speak. So he comes in. The guy has to urinate. He's standing in front of the toilet with his back to this naked man in the tub. And he's uptight. So nothing is happening. Nothing is flowing. And he's just standing there. And then he hears Gar Rinpoche closing the shower curtain. And the moment it stops, the urine starts to flow. So then he walks out. And so later that weekend, he took refuge with Garchen Rinpoche. And he told Tana Peso, he says, I don't know anything about Buddhism. I don't know anything about it, but I know that guy knows my mind. This is for all of us. This is the path. It's knowing our mind. Different levels of subtlety, different levels of attachment, different levels of ignorance, of ignoring who and what we are. But we discover, and then again, all our stuff becomes, the wonderful manifestations of our freedom. Okay, I talked a little bit too much this morning, as I always do. Forgive me on that. We'll take a break. We've got the wonderful shawls that arrived from Nepal out there for sale. Please take a look. Right in time for Christmas. And then we'll come back and we'll just do a shorter practice this morning and be out of here a little bit earlier. Okay? All right. Yeah.
Okay. So the shawls were handpicked by a cousin of both Khenpo and Soltrim. Tibetans are all from one area, especially, are almost all related. So anyway, I guess he's also an uncle to Sarah and Emma of some sort. But anyway, he took care of it, sending pictures back and forth and stuff like that. So we really thank him a lot. And they arrived last Thursday, so we've got them separated out. There are some that are $40 and the rest are $35. And there's no sales tax. Chuck, you get your sales tax back on clothing in Monroe County. So it's a straight 35 and 40. And we will take credit cards today as well as cash or check. Okay. Any questions? You can see Joelle and Cindy or me in the back.
And we're turning the heat off, so you better buy one.
Right. Okay, Dave.
Okay, take a break and we'll ring the bell when it's time. Oh, it's the on the top back there. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I know, and there's no rhyme or reason to how I'm going. Yeah, well, Sarah was, random
As long as you don't
handout.
skip me, I don't care about it.
Okay, Cindy's passing out the text. The Zoomers this morning we're going to do the aspiration prayer of Samanta Bahadra as it's been translated and versified by Karl Brunholz. Again, this is a Dzogchen text, a great perfection, and it shows this aspiration for the liberation of all beings. So it's goes through the knowledge of the state of sentient beings, but then again, fundamentally, this aspiration for realization. And he set it to music through Dzongtsar Khyentse. Wonderful thing. So it allows us to sing it in English, which is clearly a big blessing. Go ahead.
Everything in samsara and nirvana that can possibly appear as a single ground. Two paths and two results, the miraculous display of awareness and unawareness. Through the aspiration prayer of Samanta Bahadra, may all awaken in a fully perfect manner in the palace of the Dharma Dhatu. The crown of all is unconditioned, the self-arising, inexpressible, vast spaciousness, without the name samsara or nirvana. The awareness of just this is Buddha. Unaware sentient beings wander in samsara. May all beings of the three realms be aware of the reality of the inexpressible ground. I, Samanta Bahadra, am aware that this very reality of the ground without causes and conditions is self-arising within the ground, unaffected by the flaws of outer and inner superimposition and denial, and untainted by the stains of the darkness of mindlessness. Therefore, self-appearances are not blemished by any flaws within self-awareness resting in its seat. There is no fear even if the threefold existence is destroyed. Nor is there attachment to the five sense pleasures, non-conceptual self-arising mind. Neither solid forms nor the five poisons exist. The unceasing dimension of awareness's lucidity is of a single essence, and yet displays as five wisdoms. The five original Buddha families spring forth from the maturations of these five wisdoms. Through wisdom's fully unfolding from that, the 42 Buddhas originate. Through the dawning of that dynamic energy of the 5 wisdoms, the 60 blood drinkers come to life. Their foreground awareness is never diluted, since I am the original Buddha. Through my aspiration prayer, may all sentient beings cycling through the 3 realms recognize the phase of self-arising awareness, fully unfold great wisdom. My emanations form an unceasing stream, unfurling as inconceivable billions, displaying as a vast array of suitable guidance. Through my compassionate aspiration prayer, may all sentient beings cycling through the 3 realms leave the 6 kinds of existence behind. At first, sense deluded sentient beings do not dawn as awareness in the ground. They are absolutely mindless and oblivious. Exactly that is unawareness, the cause of delusion. From within that vacuous swoon, a fearful, vague cognizance stirs. From that self and others as well as enmity arise. Through the gradual blossoming of latent tendencies, samsara unfolds, taking its natural course. Due to that, the 5 poisons of the afflictions flourish, and their karmas become an incessant flow. Thus the ground of sentient beings' delusion is mindless unawareness. Hence through this aspiration prayer of myself, the Buddha, may all recognize awareness itself. Carnate unawareness is mindless, oblivious cognizance. Imaginative unawareness is the clinging to the duality of self and other. This twofold carnate and imaginative unawareness is the ground of delusion of all sentient beings. Through this aspiration prayer of myself, the Buddha, may all samsaric sentient beings, darkness of dull mindlessness be dispelled, their mind of dualistic clinging be translucent, and their awareness recognize its own face. The mind of dualistic clinging is down from the arising of subtle fixation. Tense latent tendencies gradually unfold, be it food, wealth, clothing, places, companions, the 5 sense pleasures or beloved relatives. We are tormented by our attachment to what seems attractive. These are mundane delusions. The karmas of perceiver and perceive are never exhausted. When the results of clinging ripen, we are born as hungry ghosts, tortured by a craving. How pitiful is our hunger and thirst. Through this aspiration prayer of myself, the Buddha, may sentient beings full of attachment and clinging neither cast out the torment of desire, nor welcome the craving of attachment, but may awareness take its very seat. mind relax in its own state, and may discriminating wisdom be attained. A subtle mind of fear stirs around the appearance of external objects. Thus the unfolding of hatred's latent tendencies leads to powerful enmity, beating and killing. When the results of hatred ripen, oh how we suffer through being boiled and burned in hell. Through this aspiration prayer of myself, the Buddha, when fierce hatreds flare up in all sentient beings of the 6 realms, may relax in its own state without adopting or rejecting. May awareness take its own seat, and may lucid wisdom be attained. Our own mind being hardy, it vies with others and puts them down. Through the arising of intense pride, we experience the suffering of fighting and struggling with others. When the results of those actions ripen, we are born as a god, experiencing transition and downfall. Through this aspiration prayer of myself, the Buddha, when sentient beings give rise to such haughtiness, may they let their mind relax in its own state. May awareness take its very own seat, and may the wisdom of equality be realized. Triggered by the latent tendencies of rampant dualistic clinging, the competitive mind of fighting and struggling blossoms from the pain of praising ourselves and disparaging others. Being thus reborn in the asura realm of killing and slashing, we take a deep plunge into the realms of hell. Through this aspiration prayer of myself, the Buddha, when a competitive mind fighting and a struggling dawn, may we not entertain enmity, but let it relax in its own place. May mind take its very own seat, and may the wisdom of unimpeded enlightened activity be. Mindlessness, indifference, distraction, obtuseness, and dullness, forgetfulness, unconsciousness, and laziness, and bewilderment result in roaming as animals without any shelter. Through this aspiration prayer of myself, the Buddha, may the radiance of lucid mindful to shine in the darkness of our bewildered dullness, and may non-conceptual wisdom be attained. All sentient beings of the 3 realms are equal to myself, the Buddha, the ground of all. But for them it became the ground of mindless delusion. Right now they engage in meaningless activities with the 6 kinds of karma being like delusions in a dream. However, the primordial Buddha, in order to guide the 6 kinds of beings through emanations, through this aspiration prayer of Samantha Bhadra, may all sentient beings without exception become awakened in the Dharma Dhatu. From now on, whenever mighty yogic practitioners make this powerful aspiration prayer, within self-luminous limitless awareness free of delusion. All sentient beings who hear it will fully awaken within 3 lives. During solar and lunar eclipses, when clamor or earthquakes happen, at solstices or at the turn of the year, if we let ourselves arise for some Mantra and recite this prayer within the hearing of all, through the aspiration of us yogic practitioners. All sentient beings of the 3 realms will gradually become free from suffering, and then swiftly attain Buddhahood.
Okay. I think that'll do for the aspiration prayer too, Gretchen. Covers it all. Okay. Okay. All right. Merry Christmas Eve, everyone. No activities this week. No Tuesday. No Thursday practice or study group. So the next thing is next Sunday, right? Next Sunday is New Year's Eve. We're having both Sunday morning like we do, and Sunday morning is special next time. Tracy Stillerman, our daughter, is going to give a talk on lamas and emperors, some of her work that she's done at Stanford on the relationship between Dalai Lamas and the emperors of China. And then New Year's Eve night. So next Sunday in the evening, we have our Vajrasattva for purification. And then the following day, New Year's Day, of course, 8 o'clock, the very brief, but making the light offerings, offering the new year. Okay?
And reciting the aspiration prayers for the new year.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right. So have a happy Christmas Eve and see you next Sunday.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. Merry Christmas,
Thank
Roberta.
you,
Thank you.
Zoomers. Merry Christmas.
Spider looks beautiful. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys. Love our Zoomers, especially our Montreal contingent. Thank you.
Cheers.